for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumined, beloved divine. So hello there everyone, and welcome to this video with me here today. It's a sunny day today, which is quite rare as of the late, and it's I think still warm enough for me to sit outside and share some further mission insights with all of you, those of you who are still interested, who are still here, not just to hear more information, but to understand that there is something much bigger happening, not just in this universe, but in the entire creation. So today, I want to go deeper, as I'm always extending these videos. As you can see, I'm most of all speaking about the mission updates. I don't do any other sharing here on YouTube anymore. That's reserved only for Patreon now, the teachings and the readings and, group insights for those who are really eager and desire to be on the path of Illumined Union. So that's a calling that has to come from within. But I really see that there's still much disinformation in our realm. And a lot of people don't understand even what I'm talking about, but still I have to, as I've shared before, I have to tell my story. I have to unwind it until the very end. It's not my story, it is our story, it is the universal story. And today I have more to share, as my Illumined family has been updating me just recently, as I've shared that through each release I receive more, and that's usually how things have been for me for quite a while now. I also have to tell you that the way I receive information is not like most people who say they're channelers or whatever they are. I basically, my group and we're one, and we work through this dispensation of light, which comes through basically photonic particle release. So when they come and it's my time for me to know something and decipher something within the group format of Illumined Truth, they would beam it and they would send it to me, and then it's almost like, I've explained this once, it's like a water balloon pops, but it doesn't come like someone speaks to me or there's a voice, or there's nothing like that. There's no mediumship, because as many Illumined Masters already explained, that doesn't exist. There's no deceased people talking to individuals on earth. That's a hoax. It's all astral beings and entities. Jesus explained this beautifully in his book, The Alpha and Omega, right? That devotion to the truth of the Christ path. So when I receive information, it's like I receive bits and particles, and then I have to assimilate them together. I have to make sense of what I'm receiving. It's basically, I need to work for it. It's not like, people just say I'm channeling. This can sometimes feel very effortless for people, but there's still so much, as you know, not a lot of people know about this, but there's so much hijacking of information and what appears to be intelligence coming through people, but it's not really divine intelligence. It's not illumined. It doesn't belong through the overlighted realms, higher realms. It's basically much lesser or lower realms that are being presented through these channels. Because you can't just on earth just receive something. I'm this great illumined being called Aurea, and I, as a human, my human counterpart, my human being, can't just automatically pick things up. It's not automatic. That's what people think, but it's not so easy. It requires effort. So how things function is that my group and we've been trying to do this. Well, we've been doing these breakthroughs because at each consecutive cycle of something needing to be released, coming to the bigger picture and enlightened, illuminated, overlighted with Illumined truth, not that hijacked, distorted truth, which is not truth at all, as you always hear me say. And then each of those cycles, there's a specific, what we would call it, dark energy or hijacking, or maybe just call it black magic. There's a layer of fog around it. So we have to, where we've been needing to create these breakthrough points, right? And basically what I've been telling me recently, just after one of these major, just yesterday I was sitting for 1 hour outside just receiving and picking up information and trying to gather it together, because that information comes as a spiral. It doesn't come as a linear telepathic communication even. All these things are already there. They're being dispensated, but my human self has to pick them up. I have to do the work. It's not effortless. It requires effort, and yet the receptive part, then I have to believe that it is an effortless nature of the grace in receiving from the divine, from God. And it requires such purity that very rare people have. And today, before I go into the insights they've shared with me about the mission, I want to start first at the beginning, which is divine innocence. You've been hearing me talk a lot about the inner divine child, that aspect of us that has to fully open up to what we call the consciousness of God, like really not just witnessing God, not just talking about, oh, this is source. And I've been often joking that people call it the universe, and it's not the universe. Creator is beyond what we call the universe. Universe is just one particular aspect of creation through which many different life forces and intelligences are manifesting creation, right, through their own will. And of course, those in alignment with the divine creator, they move through divine will, and those who are not really much aligned with divine will, they go with the free will. So that will be today's topic as well, because we will go right at the beginning. But my group really wants to talk about this innocence and purity, which is at the innermost part, at the precious gem level of our inner child. And if we don't go through these distortions, and when people get so sometimes stubborn and defensive, and they build the walls, and they think they know what's right, and they think they have all the aspects of their life figured out, and they just can't open up to greater aspect of receiving, of interconnectedness, of just being in that divine feminine state of flow and receptivity. They can't commune with each other. Oftentimes even you can't share, so you're not opening up, you're not sharing yourself. And this is basically where abundance comes from. It comes from you sharing your heart. That's how we receive truly, through divine will, we receive abundance. So we are our own creators by just pursuing our innocence, our true immaculate state. And I've been talking about the Immaculate One, and those videos haven't really gotten the amount of views that I would like, because it's probably where we all have to begin with. This is where our story today, universal story of this universe, will actually begin. But the Illumined Ones, we want to remind you that innocence is where it all starts. And too many souls have lost this innocence. And you might say, well, it's not really lost. Well, yeah. But in terms of the embodiments have lost it. They've lost the connection. And the idea was to be in any state. The challenge of the soul essence is to be in any state and always receive from source, and always stay in that source connection, which, as you can see, it's not so. And we've sometimes come across a state of total chaos and resulting from total disconnect. And innocence is a rare quality. And as you can see now, most people don't work on refining their state of innocence of the inner child, because they think as adults we have to become more spiritual. And this is basically what I've been talking about through the last few months, that we're turning to this innocence. Those of you who have actually been doing the work, this requires work. You can't stay the same. It has nothing to do with your personality or having such and such character and thinking, well, if I change, then that will change my very nature, and that's my nature. So, people who cling to their characters and their identity. This has to do with getting to the deepest, innermost part, which is beyond the human psyche, the true inner dweller, the inner child. It's like first connection with source that it has. It's so innocent and pure. Like even when we pray to God, when we pray from that childlike state, it's much different than praying as an adult, because an adult still has that, I got to figure it out. I have it, I'm holding it. And you're holding it sometimes. Some people are holding it for so tight, it's like so long and so tightly that they really can't receive more state of divine flow. So becoming more innocent, through accepting that flow, we're becoming more innocent. And for some people, it's becoming more of a hint now that this is where we actually should have started. And yet we've, as I've talked about, been gathering more knowledge. And, people, I've come across people who are so stubborn. They think nothing's wrong with them, like if they receive criticism, or someone who's pure would nudge them in the right direction, like, no, not me, no. Because almost like, in getting sick. people always think, well, nothing can happen to me, not me, right? Never me. I cannot get that. It's almost like there's this taking things in life for granted, but when life is not lived properly, by staying pure and radiant and in alignment with divine law, and we've talked about it in the previous videos, that there is a nature to us that is deeply religious. And this is what our inner child actually knows. The inner child was first birthed through Creator's love, through Mother's womb, knows that love, and has never forgotten that love. But we've been like piling so many things like on top of it. So in this journey, on this journey of ascension, it's truly more about becoming as innocent as little babes. Doesn't mean you're becoming childish. A lot of people confuse that and think, well, but they're childish. That's not the same. Childlike. There's such purity within you that nothing can take it away, no matter what happens. And when we're starting to heal our inner child, it still has resentments. Because let's just say, going back to my previous videos, some of us have been getting a lot of trauma because of the mission work we've been doing, and that really applies to me. During this process of 2 years just sitting and being in this abomination state of existence, like barely, breathing in a way that, it should be natural and organic through source. Child felt every one of those punches, and it kept on gathering that, and it just kept on piling within the child's receptors. So we can bypass that and say, well, I should be okay, supposed to be okay, because I'm this and that, and I'm this wise being, and I shouldn't, really consider me not being okay. And so when these things are coming to surface, like even for me recently, when I've shared these things with you, I had to really be with myself. And after the physical releases, I had to go through a lot of grieving, and I'm still going through grieving. And sometimes something spontaneous would trigger me, and it would trigger my inner child, feel how abandoned it was and how alone, and it couldn't express itself. Like, for 2 years just being there like a couch potato and not being able to walk properly, and before you were hiking and climbing mountains and all these things, the child knows. And it's basically recording all of that. And so the grieving process of what's been done has to be moved through. And this is for me where I am now. And even with all my illumined love and wisdom, there still has to be this grieving process and this downtime. So I'm more withdrawn from everything that I used to be. And so I'm being more, as you can see, reclusive in that way, and just keeping the important things here for the channel. To really also, to see who's still aboard the true nature of what ascension is. Not some sold story you can buy somewhere for the amount of a reading, like a spiritual, I would just call it a voodoo rather than a reading. But we've been like collectively really so far away from the truth and how it's supposed to be received through us in the inner child, because we want the information, but we almost like at the same time we want to bypass the inner child that I've spoken about, already know so much. But every time we've silenced it, he, she, both, right, it has sort of contracted a little bit, like a little tiny bit, and has been piling up. So now there's this summarization of all that coming to the surface for those of you doing the work, and that's a very rare few of you. Most of the time it's just people who are on my Patreon page, because you're literally we're walking together through these steps that are shared through the Illumined pathway. This pathway, as they've shared with me, begins with the one that will influence a few, and that eventually becoming the many. It's not that time yet, however, for the floodgates to open. But we've literally been opening up these gates, and it's been difficult. So they've been telling me that everything I've been feeling in my body, that my physical body went through, also directly reflected the stage of the mission where we're at. For example, in 2019, we had planting the illumined seed into the Earth's core. Then the transgression happened, remember? So it was 2 years of that and all those feelings, and resurrecting back the essence of Aurea. Now, after that was complete, it's all about the inner child for me. Going deeply into the physical things, and sometimes the things I was deprived of before, because I had to do work all the time, my child still, has like this spontaneous splurge of emotion. Like sometimes it's very fast, sudden, it moves quickly because I allow it to happen. I'm not like most people who would deprive themselves of that. I just stay with myself and try to feel where these things still happening, or entrapments and fears due to this horror that took place and is taking place, this overall fragmentation that we're going to talk to you about today. This great universal history in a way. And so it's all about that for me. And it's like it has to come out. It has to be lashed out and released in a safe environment. And that's where the inner parent comes into being, right? So it's not all just like, mission work, as many people who believe themselves to be starseeds talk about. Most of where the mission is now is remedying the physical aspect. So my family recently, when I had this discharge of information again, they were saying we're still working on the damage control. And what is damage control, right? Everything, every single one of us, who basically I would just describe as the family of Dawn, we will talk about today, what every single one of these beings experienced, not just in this lifetime. For me, it was one, because I came here for the many. I came here as the original seed to be brought back into the creation that was born, birthed from that seed, and is ready to remember now what it is and where it all began on this path of Illumined Union, right? When it started. So today I want to take you on a mini journey. But I had to present this innocent aspect before everything else, because a lot of people still don't get it, you know. Like, for example, if I got an email from someone, the email would be, let's say, dual-sided. And one aspect, like, someone would be very respectful, like, oh yeah, you know, like, for example, someone telling you, oh, you're such a, you know, epitome of love, and you exude this love, but at the same time they would talk about something really disrespectful. It's still a lot of the duality in people. Like, can't you get that, you know, if it's true respect, it has to be on all levels. You have to level up completely. This is still, you know, those nuances when I could see where people are being still so fragmented. They're not getting it. If you're truly pure, you have to be pure on all levels. I received emails from, let's say, people who've been really impure in their thoughts towards me. Like, my videos are not for people to make them into something that it becomes a part of sexualization. This is an abomination. You're literally insulting God, the divine, by doing this, you know? Just saying, because some people really don't get it. But for those of you who do, today we're going to go on a deeper story. So after the last video I shared with you, and we went on a mini journey of this rescue mission and what it was all about, and how the transgression basically went out of control, went out of hand. So just recently, when I was receiving information about this original core fragmentation, which resulted in all this chaos, obstruction, AI, all that we know, right? Everything that's basically a genocide, but it's not just like at the human level. It's happening throughout the universe, right? It's been happening on these lesser, still fragmented realms, and where souls are still having a fragmented experience. Because a lot of people believe I'm in the body, so I have a soul, so I'm fully ensouled. No. Most people who have not come into their original state of innocence and immaculate design, they're not living their full soul. They're living those fragments. Right? So soul fragmentation is a huge chapter of this work that many people just want to bypass and skip over. They just want to go to the informational part. Oh, okay, so this is happening. So this mission exists. This person is talking about this. Okay, let's say I believe that. So, okay, what's happening now? And they just automatically think they become a part of it. You have to see where somehow you locked in and see where the work is now guiding you. Because for those of you who are in this path, this is a constant work. Like, for me, it's 24/7. Like, sometimes I would go to sleep, I would just really like to sleep, and, you know, my family comes, and just yesterday it was like all gooey and itchy and pleasant, you know, when this energy comes, like, oh no, and then I couldn't sleep again, and there's a lot of things happening that, you know, it's not always how life is. For me, it can't always be planned out, you know, it's much different. It has to be just surrendered, and whatever it is, it is. So for those of you who understand that this is not just a story, we're all in it. And if you want to ascend and you want to move to what we talk about, the new ascended realm, and you want to become a part of the new soul legacy of these sovereign beings, family of Dawn, returning to their immaculate roots, you got to start somewhere. And I've been noticing that people still take things for granted. Like, I had a conversation with someone, how people who are truly brilliant gems here on this planet, they're so undervalued, they're so undermined, and not really seen for their worth. Of course God sees, God knows every single chosen pure one. God sees every single act of devotion, but humans don't, right? So when we're living on earth, we don't always feel appreciated. We don't feel the amount of energy exchange that we give out. What can we do, right? We can't force people to be aligned with us. A lot of people still dealing with a lot of heaviness, thick fog, right? Layers around them and heavy ego constructs that they basically have to deconstruct and decompose and dissolve completely if they want to basically move into the state of immaculate purity and God's innocence and God's love. You can't have love without innocence. That's the thing. Because so many people still want love. They want love, but they're not doing anything for it. They're not willing to sacrifice the lesser and the lower for that love. They want to stay in the same shell and never really taking that leap of faith. But sometimes that's all that's required, because that next leap of faith will lead you where you need to be, right? So when I actually was receiving this last wave of information, basically I received that there was never a fragmentation so huge and so vast like here now in this universe. So I'm going to start with the story here. So after the last release and getting that information out, I received more. And suddenly I was meditating outside, you know, in the sun, and I was starting to get these impressions. And this happens rarely. And when this happens, I know it's the Elohim essence and it's the creator beings. And they were starting to tell this story. They were starting to tell me this story about the beginning, which they already knew. I came very close to, but there was more. And I can't reveal all aspects yet because, you know, if I do, people take you as, you know, you're trying to present yourself in a certain light. And this is not why I'm here, as you know. I'm here for the mission, I'm here for the collective, and I'm here for the Illumined Ascension. Whatever part I play, it's important for me to know where I come in and who I am as a being, as an essence being. But I'm not here for people to either validate that and say, oh, that's not the truth. That person's just, you know, a bunch of, you know, lunatics coming through like lunacy and imagination and stuff. It's not how I am. You have to know that when my family's not around, like, and I'm not in a state of that receptivity, I can't just receive. I won't like hear voices or things. I'll just literally be the void. Like I'm gonna be in that silence until a new opening comes. I can't make things up. I'm not made that way. But what I know, I always know, and that's always like correct. And it takes me a while sometimes to get to the next level of clarity and answers coming. And it's hard work to make these breakthroughs. So when they recently came through, right, they said, we've now managed to create enough breakthroughs because, as you know, this transgression over my body took a detour, like over 2 years now. And we've had to do damage control, as they've said. So they're still in they're kind of like in this last stage, but they're also starting to build the new. And remember, we've been building this golden archway, the gateway of ascension, Illumined Ascension. So I believe this is for all souls who will move into the next Illumined realm and the new experience, which will be completely new. And it's not like anywhere in any books. You can't find it because it's so pure. It hasn't been written about it. Anything that the human ego can translate or interpret or anything like that. Even me, I get bits and pieces, and I'm, you know, trying to make this story together in my own way. You can't read about these things because they're happening as we go, and that's why no one can write a book about it. And this is how it will take place. You know, we have these prophecies still, like Notre Dame, and you know, these books like beings coming through these hypnotic regressions, stating things like as facts, and they're not facts because of the nature of free will. And the amount of deception still here in these lesser planes, and the amount of not choosing the illumined light. As you can see, for example, let me give you one example. If you have a problem, like, you know, and you mitigate almost instantly, you can solve the problem almost without any effect, you know, reaching back to that cause and effect. And you can still do something, shift the energy without too much damage control. But when you don't prevent darkness, because there's no awareness, there's no lumen cognition, you don't break through, and the darkness kind of, you know, like a bacteria, it grows over its culture, and then it's really difficult to get rid of, right? And you're using all these tools and means, and it just gets very messy and lots of entropy and things shifting and swirling around. So you have to do lots of damage control, which means like, oh, many factors, multi-factors, ooh. That's the work that Illumined beings do and know well, but it's still difficult even for them. It's much easier when this is prevented. And because the timeline we're not on now, like the entire populace of Earth we can't say it's a specific timeline. There's several timelines, as you know. We're talking about the Illumined Ascension timeline. This is my work, and that's the Illumined Mission team work. But people who've not chosen this, as you know, they're in a very low timeline. They're not doing much, and they're just taking what's being shown to them. And it's like the lowest timeline imaginable and possible, like complete control and takeover of the soul. And you say, well, but I always have the soul. No, soul can be taken over if you're not pouring the quotient of light, right, and divine intelligence into your soul. So divinity is not just something that's self-obvious and self-evident. That's the level of creator. Just is. All exuding, all powerful, all magnificent, all illuminating, all overarching, right? But the individual aspects of source, we have to cultivate. We exist because we cultivate love. And on the journey of cultivating love, we grow more wiser, right? That was the journey. That was the beginning of this realm and how it all began. Many, many realms, but also including this one, right? We'd say the lesser one. But too many have forgotten this. So because the darkness wasn't prevented at the early stages, as you can see now, the real virus is not the soul virus, which is just normal virus. I just made it a little altered, but still just the real virus is a disease of non-being awake and aware and not recognizing darkness in all of its essence and what it does. And for that to be the truth, as you know, I had to take you on a journey of transgression through many layers and steps and, of course, stages that I've experienced in my body. And when the body experienced, awareness was opening up to these things happening, right? So it was all like each time leveling up and more coming through. And because of that, there's an amount that my family of light said, we've now reached a sufficient amount of light quotient. We could start building that golden gate of ascension, that archway again, because of course they had a detour. And there's a numerous amount of beings, not just my team, but it's something very interesting they told me just recently, because as a human, right, I also don't always know everything or understand everything. And sometimes when I get resentful, because obviously there's a blockage there and there's something that my human child experiences, a hurt and a pain that was inflicted upon me, and I've experienced it, right, in the body, in the flesh. So there's like this misperception or misconception, and I would say, well, you don't really care about my physical aspects and how I live in this poor house with a bad roof and no assistance and just the two of us. You know, sometimes I get like that too, especially in the bad weather. Then it gets really creepy here in our house. Let me just tell you that. It's not really a loving feeling. I don't feel safe in this house since the very beginning. There's a lot of things. There's not a life of commodity, let me tell you that. It's like a constant, you know, always a little bit of heaviness and this burden here. Like the house for me is like a burden. It's a temporary refuge, but at the same time it's also a burden. So when I get like this, I would tell them, you know, all you care about is this mission. You don't care about my physical aspect and how I live my life. You know, no one cares. So when recently I have this transmission, it literally said to me, you know, it's not true that we don't care, because a lot of the things that were opened up was because of us all together working as one. And don't forget, they said that you're the boss. We're just doing what you actually are as the one in charge, as the queen spirit, as the original spirit, Aurea, which is the feminine creatrix, leading the way. So we're just doing per your plan, per our plan, but it's basically you being the one in charge. But my human self doesn't feel that. I feel like something is inflicted upon me and I just have to live through it, and I don't want this reality. And this is when I recognize these are moments and points of my release, right? When this physical discharge has to happen. And I've been talking to you about the pulsar of light intelligence, which is the illuminatory design and intelligence, when the little particles have to be moved. This is how we shift density. It's not just with awareness. You shift density in yourself through particle release. And when the particles start moving from one state into a more refined sublime state, right? This is what happens. This is what the pulsar does. I've been teaching it on Patreon, some aspects of it. But also where this work begins, I've told you many times, it's with life force mastery. You got to learn the cultivation process. It won't just happen. It's not going to just happen. I've been here. I'm only here for a certain amount of time on the planet. And I always tell people, well, make use of that time, you know, grab to work, start somewhere. But I still feel it's not in people's desire and intention to really ascend, because they've forgotten how beautiful the illumined truth and illumined existence is. Like someone recently asked me when I mentioned this in your realm, they said like, oh, but will we still be in physical bodies? Like, why are people so attached to this idea of being like we are now? There's even higher, more sublime, amazing, orgasmic states of beingness, but those people who've been on Earth like so long, rotating, they can't remember. They can't even have an idea. They can't even fathom it, you know? And because of that, darkness can, you know, control. It presents you a very limited picture in reality in this universe, right? So moving back, I still haven't begun with today's topic. Well, I guess should have been story of beginning, but we're actually going to tell it at the end. So after this last wave, I was sitting, as I mentioned already. I don't like to repeat myself, but I got to start at the beginning again. And so they were starting to tell me the story. And they told me a story. You know, a lot of people think, well, there's God and God creates and beings just came into existence out of nothing. And some people would try to dissect or analyze how it all began, who then created God. Like, you know, how did God just came into being? Was it since always? But what is that always? Is there time? Is there no time? Is it just always exuding? When this happens, right, we're going into the mind. It's always been like that. And the mind is the controlling aspect of this universe. So what they told me was a story of creation of two families. I'm not going to say names. The names are not important here because a lot of people are not at the level of understanding the names yet. But what I've been seeing and what they've been telling me originally, right? How we came as this family of light, how life came into being, let's just say in this local universe. So it all began with what we'd say a different universe. Expanded universe that already achieved its state, right? Like you would say graduation or completion. Things just don't die. They just are being transferred onto the next state of being. Where life can still be experienced in that kind of way. Well, on that level just before, like in the ancestral lineage, that which was before, doesn't have the need to experience life in this way anymore. So they were showing me two families. They began conscious life in this universe. You know, people always talk about the seeders, the impregnators. People see the existence of intelligent life in a different way. And it's not going to be an analytical approach here. My family of light, and this is how the Elohim speak, they always speak in terms of stories. Stories that appeal to us because they're so simple. And because they're simple, they appeal to our inner child. So those of you who will resonate, that means your heart is sufficiently open. And you can receive that without the, oh, but why and who and what's the name, huh? That's the mind, right? Those of you who are just in that state of graceful acceptance and cultivating the flow, you will receive. And so these two families, right, they were actually representing that which was kind of in that state of duality reaching back unity. And these two families left seeds here in this realm. And they said this is where the first seed or the first original soul spark for this intelligent life began in this universe, they said. And literally at the very beginning of the story, they said, they spoke to me. They said, you were that original seed. And that brought me back a few years ago when I met this man. He was a very interesting character. And we were sitting on this bench once, and he was very intuitive. He used this name. It was in this, was it shamanic? I don't know what kind of path he was pursuing. But he had this name or title, right? And then he just sat there with me, and he put his head on my shoulder. The man was much older than me. And then one of us, suddenly, he had this overflowing feeling. And he said, wow, I have a feeling like you go all the way back, and like very old in time, like to the very beginning. And at that point, I was just beginning my awakening. And I said to them, well, don't we all? And he said, like, well, no, you know. And then I realized, of course, consciousness is all existing and all is of source and all is from source, but creation-wise, right? How souls, how beings were coming out of that one core design, it began somewhere. So the narratives or the narrators were speaking to me about these two families that were the ancestors that came from, let's just say, another universe, that brought forth the seed into this one. And they said, you as Aurea Dawn, you were that seed, the seed of the beginning of the family of Dawn. But there was also another seed. And going back and tracing all the transgression, where do we, right? Where is the source? Where's the root? Of course, that fallen being, the fallen angel. Fallen creation being, fallen creation angel, we know is Lucifer. And so there are two beings, Aurea and Lucifer. I feel that at that time, the pronunciation of the names is different phonetically. Everything that we experience on Earth now is like an echo of something that like took place so long ago from the perspective of linear time, that everything in its making, right, evolved. Even the names evolved. So I don't know if those were the original names. That's why Spirit said even the names of those original families who came here are not important. They're just two families. And these two seeds, or two seeds, were, they presented to me as two sisters. They said these were two sisters, and that's basically Aurea and Lucifera. And no one knows, because this is not anywhere in any story. It's not in Bible. You won't find it anywhere. They said it's a no New Age material because it's so simple, they said. It all began with two sisters. And the idea was to place the seed again of both, right? Because one family was different of those ancestors than the other, but at the end they've reached their completion. But those two seeds were still in the beginning stages here in this universe. So they both contain the development towards whatever was chosen. So I was shown how that beautiful seed, that star child seed, began with Aurea, which meant literally the dawning light, the light of dawn, right? Being the first one of the dawn family. That first seed that started all life in this universe, all the souls that you would say now exist, that are family of dawn. The other seed, right, also created. And in the process of its creation, or her creation, also different aspects came into being, but these aspects were different. Well, in the middle, in this process, of course, when life progressed, these, I believe, they're also mixed as well. So we have what people might call hybrids, and hybrids are not just different species mixed together. Hybrids at the essence level are, you know, those who carry the illumined dawn signet of life, and those who carry the fallen aspect. And it's just life wanting to come back into wholeness. So going back to the beginning of these two sisters, the source of life, or the Holy Spirit, when it was informing me about this, was showing me that, like, as Aurea was, if you can imagine, or is, this complete devotion to source of life, complete trust in the source of life. You know, even as a human, I don't believe any one of us has completely embodied total trust. Like, complete trust. There's no doubt that Creator, everything in her life is happening per Creator. Like, you can't time things, even transgression, right? It's all somehow designed and woven in. That's what Aurea is in this universe. Complete service and loyalty to God, like the purest one of all. The immaculate design that began the seed, not just on earth, but it began with the beginning of time. So that's why for me, it's always been so difficult. I don't have friends, I don't have companions, and people say, well, why don't you have them? It's difficult for me to have them because people are not at the level of being able to maintain such high quality of refinement and purity, just being so pure. There's always going to be a disappointment coming, and I don't want, you know, people to feel less than or less valuable. So I just, you know, I just stay in my own bubble. I just, you know, live in my own life. And it's been difficult because of that. But at the same time, my child has sacrificed a lot because of who I am. So they were showing me, like, Aurea is always singing. Like, as she was singing and creating life, Lucifera actually stopped singing. She wasn't creating through original song of life, you know, songs being sung. And it was almost like, you know, even Lucifera had the seed of both. She could go either way. But how I was shown is that as Aurea was serving the divine, always going with what was shown to her, Lucifera had this distrust, which is basically the quality of, as I've explained in the beginning, where does God even begin? Where does it, you know, come from? So her perspective, like Aurea was creating with the light, was she was almost like, you know, creating through creation and like speaking out and putting that sound out, becoming vibrancy of things, gaining momentum and becoming the swirls of life force, creating different things in this universe. And Lucifera's viewpoint of that beginning of feminine principle of creation, because we're talking about two feminine principles, right? And my origin is traced all the way back to the beginning, to the core. Like they called it the primordial primary soul that began the spark of life in this universe. Okay? And so Lucifera's way was different because she wanted to understand God. She wanted to express the other aspect, which is science and research. So it's almost like, you know, scientists that are now exploring dark matter and what's behind, and, you know, how does antimatter operate, and all these things. And it's all still a continuation of that. So this is why the family of light, or the family of dawn, have been talking to me about that there was never a bigger fragmentation as it is now in this universe. Like probably in none of the universes, they said, was as big as now. So this is quite an experiment, right? So as Aurea never laid her true divine virtues aside and never skipped a beat, always danced to the beat of the source, Lucifera was different. She was a rebel. She wanted to explore what's behind, right? So basically, in one of the recent releases, I've had this strong surge and is in communion with her. I'm in connection with her. I cannot separate ways because at the core we're one. That's how I feel. I don't hate her. She's done a lot of suffering to my human body, embodiment in my inner child. She is the source of all this transgression anyway. It's where all these ideas grow, right? It's where it all begins at her tree of life. It's not really a life, but it's all life as I know it as Aurea's child. And so she's been shown to me like, that rebellious nature of trying to defy. But in that process, right, she was trying to, when I was having that communion with her, I saw her and I said, you believe you're always one step ahead of me, Lucifer, but you're not. Because I, as the light, I go before. As the dawn, I lead the way. I'm always one step ahead of you. But she believes the opposite, right? She believes she's researching what's behind that which we see as visible light. And her idea is to start. She wants to prematurely end cycles of life in this universe. That's why everything about her, all the programs are, genocides, AI, the killing off of mass populace with what's, now known to as we know what, right? And people now starting to report about this. They're starting to wake up and say, wow, this is genocide. This is not normal. And we're not calling it for what it is, the mark of the beast, right? Being stamped like animals, even worse. And codes are being written in their programs, right? So the idea was I saw her plans like trying to prematurely end life in this universe, and she believes that somehow she's going to be entitled to creation, like an overriding of her universe, basically her rules, not divine law, divine rules of divine Trinity and divine will. And this is basically do what you will. That's her motto. That's, the driving force. But in that doing what you will, that only applies to those who serve her as she wants. Like someone defies and says, no, I want to do it through my will. No. It's not the free will that we believe, oh, well, then humans have free will. No. They serve the free will that's a distortion of the concept that's basically her will. It's not divine will. So everything you've been learning about this life, oh, free will and this and that in existence has been a hoax. The only will there is that's truly divine is the will of love, it's the will of God. For that, you have to open your heart to the truth. Otherwise, you can stay in this new agey concepts and how you can do whatever you want, manifest whatever you want, and doing it in a way that doesn't consider others and all life. It's still selfish, and selfishness is not a trait of the Illumined Dawn family. So the Dawn family is the origin, the offspring of all of those that came into being out of the original seed of life. Is the Dawn family. And there was the other family, right? They were her offspring. And now in this process, right, I said they're already starting to merge and blending and crossbreeding and all of that. We have all sorts of phenomena. We say even ET phenomena, all these things, but they're all a result of this merging and coagulation and blending. It's very complex. I don't want to go into that today. I don't believe my family wants anyway. A lot of people still don't get even the basics, so it's intense. But as you know, I've not been a person of, doing lots of physical things like traveling here and there. I've been traveling, moving through the mountains a lot in my life. But most of the time, I travel with my consciousness, and I travel all the way back to the origin and the beginning of this universe and creation, and I've received so much. I've received and seen more than most humans here on the planet can. And I've also been witnessing things like, for example, why did then Aurea, through me, by creating her human design for the first time ever, she's not yet been pierced through into the 3D realm before. And now she has. And it's been through me. And I've been wondering then why this way, and being so alone and being with my mother all these years. And basically the Spirit of God completely showed it to me in an instant. It's because my mother was basically the purest, most innocent soul of them all. She was, as Aurea was the light, like my family said, you as Aurea, you are the light of this universe. You light everything up. And they said, my mother, she was the light of the earth. She was here as one of of course, also of the family of Dawn. But there's different branches, because it became very diverse as life, moved out and became biodiverse and multiverse in many different facets in this universe. So I saw her, I was watching her, and she was like the purest one. She was most shiny. She didn't know back then. But her lives were really lives of complete devotion. She showed complete resilience and non-defiance when it comes to darkness. She, non-compliance, and she was always defiant, Stay true to God, 100%. When we say someone's the purest of them all, doesn't mean someone who you see on TV and say, oh, that's a guru, New Age teacher, or someone, those are usually not the purest types. When as God sees, right? God sees the spark of our inner child. If the flame matches the original creatrix prism of life design that moved out into the life, that's what God sees. God reads the original blueprint of life. And however much distorted that became, doesn't matter how much knowledge you have, whether you're a guru, teacher, and know a lot, that's not how God sees souls. So she was literally the purest one of them all. That's why Aurea has chosen her. And she's probably the only person I could manage to even live with in that way. Because I've been just so, literally, I'll tell you stories. When people were in my life, I sometimes got sick because they carried so much, stuff still trapped in all of their bodies. And I never felt this way with my mother. She had work to do. I've been kicking her all my life, for her to get to where she is now. But she was the purest one of them all. So every step was so clearly, seen through. It's basically very simple. All the answers that are truth-based are always simple. So that's what I was seeing. That's what they were showing me. And everything that I had to go through was to sacrifice the lesser for the higher. And that's why my body went through such difficulties and, I'm not going to go into it because I've been talking about it for such a long time now. And I know people think it's repeating things, but then you're not listening clearly. It's always going deeper. I do not repeat. I'm not the kind of person that repeats. We always go deeper. As a human, through these uncharted waters, I unveil more and I open up to more. That's what then comes to me. And it will take a very, very pure soul to stand next to me, and I could be okay with them. I could live with them. I could be with them, I thought, my inner child thought like God abandoned me and I'm so isolated, I'm so alone. But God basically protected me because I had such a huge task in this life to bring the original seed, that immaculate seed from the very beginning, and pull it in this body and say, you go all the way back to Aurea. I go all the way back. And so you, who are the ones who are interested, who are open, who somehow you feel at least a part of this feels close and resonates, you're starting to remember your own roots in the family and ancestry of the Dawn family. And there's been a lot of atrocities that the opposite family did to our family. But in the way we spoke about before, we've learned to cultivate more of who we are. We've chosen it since the beginning of the time that we won't take the easy route. We're going to take the difficult part, the difficult task, and we're going to grow through the process of being opposed and transgressed and even regressed at some level. So regression means you can't basically remember truly anymore who you are. So that's the work that I do now is mostly based on me revealing these higher aspects of just remembering my mission at the core, because those 3 years back when I just started with the videos, it was all still so surface-based level for me. Now we're talking. For me, now it's this. This is it. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is the mission. It's difficult. It's not, before when I didn't have all this vision was much simpler for me. I admit that. But it's deeper now, and I wouldn't choose any otherwise. And for you who are opening up, that's why for me, the most important part now, I believe, is to be open here, to be a pure channeling conduit for people who would come to sessions, have these sessions with me, because I would kind of help them to remember more of their roots. Because a lot of people have these thick veils around them that you can't really manifest their true selves. They're always struggling and tolling and laboring. And it's basically the main work, as you know, that I do is soul liberation work. So it is a work. People sometimes, I just recently said this to someone, it amazes me how many people now are all about buying these things that we say they're spiritual items and things, but they will never invest in themselves. I mean, this is the investment in your soul. This is the longing of your soul. And people would say, I don't have enough money for this. You already decided your fate when you say this. You have to go to God. You have to pray. And if you believe this is something you feel in your heart would help you and assist you, but you say, at the same time, you don't hold any value for it. Like people who don't hold value, they think, I'd rather, pay somewhere else. God won't give it. God gives it to those who will have and hold value for it. So if you hold value for it and your desire is pure enough and you want to go deeper, you want to reach beyond the known and the norm, you want to remember more, and you want to move beyond the transgressions that you experience as a sovereign soul, right? And you want to locate those inception points. And that's the work I do, that we do as one family. I don't do it as an individual. I do it through my higher consciousness and the illumined overarching design, right? So first you have to have value, you have to respect, you have to reciprocate, you have to know that the energy exchange is, for the work that's so priceless, is still quite low, I believe, for the work. You know, I've had someone who said, wow, you've given me so many hours. That's really, really generous. I'm like, I couldn't, you know, I couldn't really control time. When I go into the session, sometimes it's very timeless. And for the amount of energy exchange, I truly offer a lot. You won't find anyone like this, because I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it to really serve these souls, who are these precious individuals. They're like precious souls. They're all precious gems, and they're so valuable, you know. But we still give honor and appreciation to things that are material based. So those of you who do appreciate, you do honor, you also know the energy exchange has to go, because it supports equal give and take. It's never going to be fully equal, in my opinion, because it's really priceless. You can't put a price on that. But, you know, we got to start somewhere. And my physical human self has to be loved, appreciated, felt nourished by the energy exchange. So that's what I believe is still why I'm here. Most of all, because they were showing me we're needing to build the Golden Gate. Like, there's still some leftovers. Until that time, I believe I will still be physical here in the planet. Don't know when, because, you know, it depends on when it's built. Then I believe there's going to have to be a movement through and a crossover. But until then, I'm here. I'm here to bring those updates when they come. And, you know, I'm here for those of you who are wanting to be assisted on a path. But also those of you who just want to support what's already coming out. These are hours and hours of videos you can see. I've been doing it for 10 years, humbly. That's for free, but at the same time, you know, show some love, show some appreciation, send a donation here and there, you know, I hope, because that appreciates, you know, that sends the energy of appreciation, and whatever we emanate out will come back to us. Otherwise, you're just going to be a bystander and a watcher and just observe in and out. So, you know, if you find it in your heart, do the conscious energy exchange. I haven't mentioned this in a while now, so I don't always do, because I believe it's like just repeating myself. But I feel now it's time that I do. You know, I've been going through some deep stuff, and those of you who know it's the truth, and it's not all just all pretty, because this being, the sister that's chosen a different path, has caused a lot of havoc in this universe. Lots of fragmentation. A lot of souls are finding very hard, very difficult to move back to the origin, to the innocent state. And when the innocent state is prevented, we can't really have true soul access to God, because that's how we access God, in our innocence and our purity. You can pray to God, whatever kind of state you're in, but you really access and feel it in that state of purity. And for me, whenever this dark cloud of heaviness and thickness and dark magic was there, we had to create another breakthrough, and it was like so difficult for me, and my inner child basically got sick of it a bit. I'm like, why always this? But there wasn't another way. Like, either go through the cloud or stay in it and be devastated and in depletion and, you know, fearing. They're like, Lucifer has been sending so much fear. She's been like threatening and even threatening my inner child, especially through the occurrences in this house. It wasn't easy, you know, with the situation, you know, with our roof, with things here. And I've just been praying so hard, you know, that this is resolved somehow. I don't know how, but that we get assistance, that we get support, that we're more of a family than just the two of us. It's been difficult for two ladies alone. No matter how strong we are, right? We're still physical beings made of flesh and blood. So it's not easy with the 3D things until we're still here. So living in 1,000 meters of elevation. Sun is going behind our highest mountain peak here in our country. So it's a beautiful transmission and a passageway. And I believe this is where we also will end today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'm going to do some inner child healing sessions on Patreon now, because I believe this is for those of you who are there at that level. To start with, it's not getting more information. You're not going to find anything anywhere, because it's time to do the work now. We're not in the informational awakening anymore. We're in the feminine principle stage now. Feminine principle is life force cultivation, is learning how to do the particle dispensation and discharge to shift your density, to move yourself out of the thickness, to eventually become non-susceptible to these heavy clouds all around, because until our inner child is in this body that's of a specific density, it will still feel the effects of this darkness and transgression. So we have to move beyond, but for doing that, right, we need to do the work. So join me on my working page called Illumined Ascension on Patreon if you want to be part of the membership of devotees to Illumined Ascension. And it's such a minimum amount of energy exchange. I don't think I could go lower than that. I mean, I have met people, I saw people who have like hundreds of euros. I'm like, what? You know, because I wanted to have a bigger group with, you know, not so much energy exchange for each month, but, you know, people just, I don't know. I don't know what and what stage people are at. I only know where I'm at. I know the truth and what God wants me to talk about and to share with those of you who are interested. So, goodbye, the sun. I salute you to come up, but not tomorrow because we have some snow predicted, at least where I live, and it's not easy because the climate is just so cold and my body doesn't like it. So until we get warmer and until something shifts, we will do the work. We will keep on doing it. It's going to have, you know, when we will have colder days, I won't be recording. I don't know what I'll be guided to do next, but I was in this deep reclusive state now, slowly coming back to life and out of this grieving stage for all that took place, you know. Just continue with coming back to life, more to life. And I hope to see you in some way, some form. Pick something, whatever, you know. People will think, well, it's so difficult. You know, you can start at the beginning. You don't have to start with something big and grand, you know. Whatever moves the energy forward. So thank you for that and understanding and appreciating and respecting and contributing and knowing that this is the work we do for all. It's not for me. It's for all of the family of Dawn. So thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time with love, wisdom, and power of the beautiful light of the Creator, the sun, the dawn, and all that is the golden one. Thank you.
Come into my world, the world of the elven song, magical.